Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back yet again to another scintillating episode of The Breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID. Shout out to Tony, the Pugilist Boy, but for now, I am a child of the game. Yeah, as you guys love to see, I'm here doing it as a Ness from the boxing voice would say, solo dolo, Scarface, no Manolo. Simple and plain. Tony hit me up last night real quick, asked if I could do the show by myself. I'm assuming he's at the Arsenal game at the moment, so he's either at it or he's probably watching it, hence why he's left me to sort of carry the load of the show. But it's all good. It means that we're going to have a quick show, a fairly smooth show. And most important, there's not going to be any mad interruptions or sound effects when I'm speaking. So, I mean, I guess that's a win-win for me, at least. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But yes, thank you everyone who's tuned in already. I'm going to do the quick roll call. We're going to get into it. And I'm going to let everyone enjoy the rest of their Tuesday evening. So, first up, from what I can see, big ups to man like Dan, the man, hardest working guy on X, Mr. SC15 himself. He is in the building and he looks like he's the first one in. Tyler MF Durden. I've seen that number. I've seen that name before. Sorry. Yes. Not often on the breakdown, but I have seen the name. So thank you very much for tuning in. Hold tight to the undefeated familia. Most definitely. Obviously Tony's been in and put a little like on the channel prior to watching the game. Philip Answer, big up to you. Bigsy Biggs, Chris Collymore, Hot Pies, Skyliner, the editor, Jonah 31, Mr. Clyde Gordon himself, big ups to you, Clyde. And yeah, yep, that's right. Man like Base carrying the ship today is what had to be done. Philip, so he decided to watch football rather than do his job. I mean, clearly, you know, I'm the only one that's willing to sacrifice for the greater good. But hey, it is what it is. Bruce Cow, someone say the hatred for Uncle Tony is clear to see. Everybody is a big admirer of Uncle Tony. But I'm just saying, whenever I do these by myself, they happen to run smooth with no mad sound effects popping up left, right, and center. So yeah, just a little, you know, little calm vibe. So yeah, big up to everyone in the building. Thank you very much for tuning in. As previously stated, gonna jump right into it. I guess really and truly, the first place to start is Belfast. Let's talk real briefly about Lewis Crocker against Jose Felix. Look, my overall thoughts on the fight itself, I have to be 100% honest. I was not impressed with Lewis Crocker in the slightest. I mean, don't get me wrong, he did what he needed to do. The knockout, or should I say the knockdown that led to the fight being stopped, because I don't think it was a proper knockout, to be totally honest. But that was a brilliant shot. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But my thoughts on the fight itself, I mean, realistically, so let's take a little bit of the backstory. You had a guy that's essentially 135 pounder in Jose Felix being moved up 2 weight divisions to face Lewis Crocker, who then doesn't even come in on weight because, okay, he says that he wasn't allowed to because I guess he missed the check weight on the Wednesday or the Tuesday, whenever they have the check weight during the week. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the issue is, if you know that, all right, so you fought in, I think the last time you fought was in December, early December, I think it was like the 2nd of December or something like that. I think it was the Jordan Gill card, Jordan Gill and Michael Conlan. So, okay, maybe you haven't been given a specific date that you're going to be back, but I'm sure that Eddie Hearn's not just going to spring on you like 3 weeks to go, oh, I want to put you back in the ring. More than likely, you would have had an idea that you would have been in and around that time frame to come back. So then it's on you to be professional, to not overindulge over the Christmas period or the New Year's period or whatever and balloon too far up in weight. So you do that, so then you can't make the contracted weight of the bout, and you come in 3 pounds heavier to a guy that's already essentially given up £15 to you anyway. Like 30, what are we looking? 135, £12 plus, yeah, £15 generally speaking, already giving up £12 to you, plus the fact that you clearly rehydrate to at least 165 at 147. Whereas he looked like he didn't really have to drop much weight to get to 147 in the first place. So it was just a natural mismatch to begin with in that sense. But I was actually impressed with Jose Felix's boxing and moving for those first few rounds, because ultimately at that point he was never gonna try and outpoint and or stand in the middle and sort of outgun him. His best bet was to use his speed and was to box and move. And it was a shame because he was landing some very good shots. Obviously Lewis Crocker had a very high tight guard, but he was landing some good shots between the guard, around the guard at times, but they were just having no effect. And you could clearly see on the night just the massive size difference between the two of them. To me, if I'm gonna be real, now I know that Crocker isn't the biggest of punchers to begin with, but he punches hard enough. And for Jose Felix to actually take some of those shots that he took and stay on his feet, I was impressed. I gotta be real. I'm gonna give him, and on this particular instance, I normally aren't not the type of person that gives praise to the loser of the fight because like you lost, but when you kind of got everything stacked against you, like I'll commend the effort. And on this occasion, like he had a lot stacked against him. But yeah, his jabbing, his hitting and moving, his hitting off the counter and spinning out to the side. A lot of it just Crocker just didn't really have much of an answer until sort of about round 3, when he started basically just trying to plow forward, plow through the shots, and started investing a bit to the body. Now he landed some very good shots, and I think it was in the 3rd round. It's either the 3rd or the 4th where he dropped Jose Felix the first time, and then you thought, oh, he's about to basically just get the work done now and get him out of there. But Jose Felix was on the ropes, basically just riding shots. Took some really big shots in that salvo. The ref looked like he wanted to stop it, but Felix is there. He's lucid. He's trading, and even on the very last exchange in that trade off of the ropes, Felix actually caught Crocker to the point that made Crocker have to back off. So I said, okay, so he ain't come to lay down. He ain't come just for the paycheck. He's actually come to win. Hence, I think why he still decided to make that 147 weight, because he wanted the trinket WBO belt that was on the line. Now, interestingly enough, in the 5th round, I believe it was, and I don't know if it's just me, I've only watched the fight once, I haven't watched it back, but there was a moment where Jose Felix landed a really big right hook on Lewis Crocker. I think he either dropped his guard or it went around the side of the guard and the arms were too far in front. And from what I saw, it looked like he really hurt him, because Lewis Crocker, to me, I saw his head drop, his arms dropped. He's like, he froze in place. And I thought, oh, he's really hurt here. But I don't think Felix either saw it quick enough to make the adjustment to actually, basically spring into action, or he was still cautious, because obviously he's still in there against a guy that's much bigger than him. He didn't want to chance his luck. But from what I saw, that shot itself looked like that was definitely his best shot for the entire fight. And to me, it looked like it temporarily scrambled the senses of Lewis Crocker. But after that is when he basically plowed forward, and then eventually ended up getting that very brutal knockdown at the towards the end of the 5th round. Now, I've got an issue with the fact that the fight was stopped. I can understand it from the perspective of, look, the guy's gone down twice. He's a much smaller guy, getting basically now bullied and dominated around the ring, and is basically just in there surviving. But the way he got up from that knockdown, he didn't get up on heavy legs. He didn't get up with a big sigh like, oh, let's go again, or anything like that. The way he got up strong, he got up sturdy. He turned around to the ref at the count of 8 and said, I'm good, let's go. And then the ref waved it off. He was clearly upset and perturbed by the fact that the ref waved it off. And I have to agree with him, because in that moment, I specifically thought, even though, yeah, he now isn't winning the fight. I had him 3-2 up technically on rounds, even though like he obviously got dropped twice. So he would have been down a point. But in that same moment, he's still lucid. He's like he's comprehensive. He's not, he's not foggy eyed or anything. He said, "I'm fine, I'm good, let's go," and he wasn't given the opportunity to carry on. I can understand it. Maybe you say, "Well, it's only going to go one way. I need to save you from yourself." But it's the way I see it, if he hasn't staggered, if he hasn't given you a clear indication that he is hurt and he can no longer continue, there was no reason to wave it off. And it wasn't even the third knockdown, so you can't say, "Oh, he was adjusting to the 3 knockdown rule," either. So I'm not gonna say it was a bad stoppage, but I didn't like it. That's what I'll say about that. But then sort of Lewis Crocker doing the whole Conor McGregor strut around the ring afterwards and being so happy and elated at getting the victory, I thought was just all a bit tacky in my mind. Like, if you'd have come in on weight, then fair enough, that's one thing. But you was definitely doing the weight bully thing in the ring. You done it against Tyrone McKenna the fight before, and you're proud of that. Like, oh, I'm here, I'm the guy. No, not for me. So, I mean, look, he got the win. He did what he was supposed to do against a much smaller guy. And if it was a case whereby, say, Jose Felix was Shakur Stevenson level, so world class elite level athlete, we know that he's one of the best in the game, and then you bring him up and you beat him, I give you a props, because that guy's got skills. But Jose Felix is not a world beater like that. So to be acting like you basically just won your first world title, off of beating up a guy that's like 2 divisions smaller than you, to me just felt a bit tacky, a bit tasteless, and just a bit, unbecoming of someone that's supposed to be, supposed to have a name. And I don't think he probably represents Ireland in the best light. But I could be wrong. I'm not Irish. If there's any Irish people watching, feel free to let me know if I'm chatting shit. But yeah, I'm going to leave that one there. I'm going to fly through a couple other fights that was on that card. Just before I do so, go to the comments real quick. Bigsy Biggs, mad, I didn't even know that. I watched Felix bash up Gary Cully, and now it makes sense why Crocker looked like he was whacking so much harder. Yep. Jam Down 187, big ups to you. Bless up, Base. I see Tony has ditched you for the football today. I mean, I'm gonna say it's a speculation. He hasn't confirmed that's what he's doing, but when Arsenal's playing, I've got to assume that his eyes. You can always tell whenever we got the show and Arsenal's on the TV, you can always see when his eyes start to drift away from the screen and doing the job. He's always looking at the screen. You could tell that he's invested in the football that's on the pitch. Philip Answer even brought up Tyrone McKenna. Exactly. Yes, that is very correct. Hot Pies, you could see the weight difference, 100%. Big up to Danny Glover, Fight Fan TV Live. Big up to you. Obviously says, yeah, that Crocker is a muggy guy, in my opinion, celebrating in rejoicing fashion, like he really done something impressive. 100%. 100%. Okay, so full disclosure, I didn't watch that card in any great depth. I saw all the fights, but I wasn't really like paying attention to properly break them all down, because I didn't have a huge interest in it, except for Chef Clark and Tommy McCarthy. So just before I get to that, obviously, I want to give a shout out to Giorgio Vizioli, another one punch KO against Pikire. So I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, but I felt bad for him as well. I understand why he got stopped, because obviously he got up and then he staggered. He staggered forward like 2 steps, but by the time he turned around on the count of 9, he was back clear and lucid. He wanted to carry on. I don't think the ref had to wave that one off. It was still early in the fight. He was, he wasn't just being outgunned and outmanned for the entire he was in there trying to throw punches. He was being competitive. I didn't think it was necessary to stop that when it was stopped, but I'm not really going to complain too much. Paddy Donovan, who did he face? The guy, I think his name was Sikera. I think is the guy's name that he faced. Again, it was from what I saw. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it looked a pretty decent, comprehensive performance. He got tested in there. There were some really hard rounds in the middle, sort of rounds. I think 4 and 5, 4, 5, and 6 were particularly tough rounds for him, where we had to basically make some adjustments, make some adaptations in the ring. Got his nose bloodied a bit as well. Took some shots, proved that he can take a crack. So in that sense, just gotta big up to him. They might maybe slow down the brakes on him and say, okay, well, we're not gonna fast track him to where we thought he might be. Maybe we just keep him in the round here for 1 or 2 fights, just to see how that gels, and maybe to find out if the right move is to carry on progressing him. But I think he's going to stay in and around this level. So big ups to Paddy Donovan. Right, now moving on to Chef Clark and Tommy McCarthy. Now, this fight pretty much played out exactly as I thought, except I did think that it would go about, I thought it would go maybe a round or two more. But at this point, we know what Chef Clark is. He's very good at getting into range. He's got a very deceptively good jab that he uses just literally more time to blind his opponent. He does want to push through the target with the jab, but his main incentive is to attack that opponent's eyesight and attack their arms to keep them occupied, so he can step in to the overall range into either the mid range or on the inside, so that he can just start banging to the body, setting up those body shots, and then those little short uppercuts on the inside. And he did that pretty much at ease for the majority of the fight. I will say in the second round, Tommy McCarthy had his best moments, because at that point you saw that Chevron Clark was getting a bit too greedy. He was staying a bit too close in the pocket, and maybe not having his guard as tight as he was, and he was also dipping his head down, obviously, to keep his head on the chest of McCarthy. But by doing that in the second round especially, you saw that he ended up catching a very vicious looking uppercut, which, to his credit, he ate. He didn't show any ill effects from the uppercut, but it was clear to see that you don't want to be just there with no sort of defensive responsibilities. So in that particular moment, I feel like he done well. He done particularly well to get that to sort of just get that momentum back from that particularly heavy looking shot. But yeah, those are the kind of things that he wants to tighten up in, because obviously Tommy McCarthy's a certain level, but when you step up to that going back up to sort of, I guess maybe you could say he might be past British, or he's at that British fringe European levels at the moment. If you really go up to there, those guys are going to be able to set those shots up a bit better. So that defense has got to stay tight, especially when you're barreling forward with your head down. Can't have your arms out here. Everything's got to be tight to the guard. But with that being said, I thoroughly enjoyed sort of the demolition job he done. And then I had a crazy thought in my head. I don't really do the whole matchmaking thing on the show and fantasy bookings, but I can't lie, a fight that I would really like to see, it would have to be a catch weight, but I would really like to see Chev Clark and Dan Aziz. That maybe, like, if Chev was able to get down to say 190, maybe 188, it would be, I'd love to see a catch weight between those two, because their styles look very similar. They have very they have very sort of similar setups, the way they set up the punches, the way that they work on the inside. It would be I would still edge probably Chev, just because he's so much bigger than Dan, but just in terms of a style matchup, it would be, to me, a great fight to watch. Obviously, like I said, you have to have you're going to have a catch weight, and then maybe even a rehydration clause on there or something. But yeah, anyway, let's get away from that, because that's not really the mode I want to be in. Jay Lanks, big up to you. Thank you for tuning in. Philip Answer says, I would like Chev to fight Vidal Riley. I called for that fight, but Vidal's got the English, and I don't think Chev's really looking back in that direction. He's mandatory for the British, so for him, in his mind, Vidal's a step back. And whereas obviously because they're both Olympians, it's not like, oh, you could say one's got the bigger amateur experience over the other. They both were quite accomplished amateurs. So yeah, he's kind of progressed past that level at the moment, and he's on the fast track. He ain't got time to really be stepping back to that level. You know, Vidal's what, 26, 25, 26. He's 33. Like, he needs to keep moving forward, a la what Joe Joyce done. So yeah. Okay, so that's those fights out the way. Moving over to the Golden Boy card. So I watched most of the fights. I actually had to watch 2 of the fights back just before I started the live stream. I just wanted to make sure I kind of had my thoughts gathered together for this. Now, the first thing I want to say, there was a fight on that Golden Boy card at the start of the main broadcast. It was a guy called Picasso. I think his name was John. I think his name was John Picasso. I just need to get the name up on my other phone. Give me a second. Mungia Jaime. Okay, so let's see. What was this brother's name now? I want to give him his full credit. Alan. So Alan Picasso Romero against a guy called Eric Ruiz. It was the fight that opened up the show. If you haven't seen this fight, you need to watch it. It's for 2 reasons. So number one, Eric Ruiz, brother, he at the moment was in a situation whereby he's become homeless because I think his house got flooded out from wherever he was. I can't remember which state he was in. So basically, him and his 3 sons have been moving from like motel to motel until he can find a new place for them to live. So there's that sort of mode there. So he had 8 losses, I think, prior to this fight, but he'd never been stopped. Now, from round 1 up to basically round 6 of this fight, this Alan Picasso Romero was finding clean shots left, right, and center. Now, there was times, obviously, Eric was doing pretty well at slipping and riding some shots, getting the arms up, but there was a lot of shots he was just taking clean to the chin, clean to even to sort of to the temple. And I mean, when I say clean, I mean like clean, as in almost like basically his arms are down by his side and he just boom. And not one time in this entire fight can I remember seeing him wobble. He kept just walking forward, walking through the shots. To me, and I had to say to myself, okay, is this Picasso guy, is he feather fisted? Is his knockout streak, is it one of those manufactured ones, or is this guy just really got a chin like that? Because Picasso, I think, had about 15 KOs from 27 fights. So that's it's a decent punching power. It's not amazing, but it's enough. But yeah, the guy literally was just walking through all of these shots to the point where I think in the 6th round or the 7th round, I think he threw a body shot at Picasso, which really hurt him. I think it damaged one of his ribs. So from like the 6th round on, he stopped throwing haymakers and he had to start boxing on the back foot. And he was still out winning a lot of the rounds through the boxing, but now all of a sudden you've got Eric Ruiz like stepping forward and he's starting to apply the pressure and he's starting to have success and starting to win the back of these rounds. And it was just the craziest turnaround. It really felt like one of those Rocky films, maybe like Rocky 1, where he's facing Apollo and like Apollo's just kind of piecing him up towards the start, but then Rocky just starts to take over on that back stretch and then it ends up a draw. It felt like that. And it was just a really enjoyable fight to watch. So if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend, putting aside 30 minutes to jump on your DAZN app and have a look, because it was a really good scrap. Right, next fight on there I want to talk about was Gabriela Fondora against Christina Cruz. Now, this was for the IBF, the IBF flyweight championship at 112. Now, I like Gabriela Fondora as a fighter. I think she's a really vicious puncher, and the fact that she's basically like her brother in the fact that she's so much taller than everyone else in the division, but she's got that long, sort of slim frame. but she obviously has a much better jab than her brother. She sets up shots much better than him, and she knows how to manage range better than he does. But in this fight, this was interesting because Christina Cruz was a very, very decorated amateur who was supposed to go to the Olympics for Puerto Rico. And due to obviously the lockdown and everything that happened in 2020, she missed that opportunity, and so decided to go pro rather than to actually compete in the Olympics. But she had over that 200 amateur fights, so very decorated. But she's also 41 years old now, so she turned pro at like the age of 38. Now, I've got to be honest here. So initially on the night when I was watching the fight, I scored the fight at the time of the stoppage, which we're definitely going to talk about in a minute. I scored the fight 87. No, I scored it 88-83 to Gabriela Fondora, giving Christina Cruz the second and the fifth round. I've recently just rewatched it, and my scorecard's different now. So I've actually got it 86-85 to Fondora. It's either 86-85 or 87-84. And the way I've done that is because there's one round where I said, okay, I'm going to give it to her, but she could have quite easily got it. So in that particular instance, I'm just saying that's what the scorecard would have been. So the fight was actually, while I felt that Gabriela was always going to win, and while I felt she would win fairly comfortably just due to youth and the size advantage, when I rescored it, Christina actually did much better than I initially thought the first time round. There was a lot of shots that I saw her throw initially that to me weren't landing, but then on the second time watching, there was other shots that I had missed, and then even though Gabriela was trying to control behind the jab and was obviously trying to get into range with the jab, she was getting countered off of it sometimes. Even if some of those shots weren't landing, there were some that were, and obviously there were some body shots that did go in too. So yeah, I had to rescore it in that vein, but that in itself wouldn't have changed the outcome because the 10th round was still a Fondora round. So instead of a 98-92 fight, which is what I initially had it, I would have had it 96-94 to Fondora. So she still would have won quite convincingly on my scorecard. That being said, Christina Cruz was very good on the very good at moving around, stopping Gabriela from setting her feet, especially in the first half of the fight. She's a person, she doesn't really throw shots until she gets a chance to set her feet. Gabriela chose not to she chose not to allow Christina chose not to allow Gabriela to really set her feet because obviously she knows she's got the power, and that's just how she naturally throws. So she basically set that one up, and she was having loads of success in the first half of the fight. Obviously, Gabriela was competitive, was in the fight as well, but she had, but she was having her moments, and she was winning quite a few of those earlier rounds, more than I gave her initially. But from round 5, which was the last good proper round she had, there was right at the end of the round, I think she caught a bit of a body shot, which basically carried over, I think, into round 6. And when that's basically coming to round 6 and then round 7, where the body work's happening now Gabriela's actually just getting close to her. She's basically almost like rushing to the target to stop Christina from being able to box and move and to box at pace, at her own pace. Gabriela's now starting to increase the pace, and that's the moment where basically it was starting to get on top a bit for Christina. And yeah, at that point, you just saw you saw it only going one way. But that being said, I felt, it was going to go to points and Gabriela was going to win. So we talk about now the way that the fight was stopped. Now, to me, I've said online, because bearing in mind, I picked Gabriela to win the fight. So obviously I want my pick to be right. So if she's winning, I want her to win, basically. Danny, no, you haven't missed Mongear versus Ryder. That's coming up next, so you're just in time for that one. Actually, before I get into that stuff, okay, Base, after last week, I don't know if I'm allowing you to do that. Not after last week and rescoring a fight. What did I rescore last week? I didn't rescore any fights. last week I had the Jonas fight. I scored it one way, and that was a very consistent fight all the way through. So tell me what fight I've rescored, or are you just upset that I scored that fight in particular? I'm not sure, but put it in the comments and I'll address it in a moment. But yeah, I had the issue with the stoppage with Christina. I felt bad that the fight got stopped the way it did. Essentially, for anyone who hasn't seen it, you would have seen that Christina Cruz obviously stepped in, obviously from that southpaw stance. She's a orthodox fighter, sorry, and Gabriella's a southpaw. So she stepped in and she's tried to throw a left hook, and Gabriella's basically moved out the way of the left hook. And as she's obviously moved, Christina has then tripped over Gabriella's foot, her lead foot. As she's tripped over, obviously she sort of spun to kind of in front of her, and then she gets hit with her right hand to the back of the head. So as she gets hit with that right hand, she falls forward a bit. So as she's falling forward, she's now okay, because she can't see where her opponent is. She's ducked down and she's got her arms up, like protecting herself, which is what you're taught to do if you ever find yourself like, with your back to your opponent. You protect your head, you protect yourself from shots. Now at this moment, as she's ducked down with a guard like that, the ref, in my personal opinion, and from what I've been told and from every metric that I've seen, is supposed to break the action, pick her up, tell her to turn around, and either warn her not to do it again or take a point off. But clearly, because it's the first time it's happened, I don't think you take a point off. But again, it happened because it was a southpaw with an orthodox fighter, and she tripped over the foot. So in this moment, so she's bent down, like obviously trying to protect herself. And then my issue also with what happened next is Gabriella is behind her, like literally behind her, like she was trying to whine her in the dance. Like there was no attempt to move to the side. There was no attempt to step round the angle and hit her from the side. No, she was literally behind her, punching from behind. So the woman can't see where she is at this point. She can't defend. And so at this moment, obviously, she then hits. She tries to throw one to the head, which Christina blocks. Then she throws one into the ribs, which obviously lowers her hands and dips her hands down into her ribs. So she then, as she's walking, she actually picks herself up and walks towards the ropes, thinking that, okay, well, the ref's gonna break the action so that she can turn around. At this moment in time, the ref obviously has seen her walk to the ropes with the hands. With obviously her hands, up and not watching her opponent, and at that point, he decided to wave the fight off and say that she's no longer fit to continue. But in that particular instance, I felt very poor stoppage. Sergio Moro on the broadcast said he believed that was a really bad stoppage as well, because ultimately it wasn't. While obviously, yes, she shouldn't have. You can't bend and turn your back to your opponent. The turning the back happens because it was a punch that came through that she didn't see. It was a punch to the back of the head, and she tripped over the foot, hence why she ended up that way. So it should have been to the ref to say stop, turn around, like be careful or whatever. And I think that it was even though she was definitely going to lose on the scorecards, because the scorecards was wide in Fondora's favor anyway. But even that being said, I think she deserved to see the final bell, unless Fondora visibly, when she spun around, got her out of there in the next 40-50 seconds, which she's got the power to do. But the way the fight was stopped, I felt was just a really poor stoppage. I felt it was a disservice to the work that Christina had done. And in the circumstance, if you see how, you see all the events that led up to it, it just looked very, very bad. So yeah, I'll kind of leave that one there. Any of you, if you guys saw it, please let me know how you felt about it. Obviously, I've been going, me and Julius from Ring IQ, gone back and forth on this one, both on the live and also on Twittex a little bit. But yeah, like I said, that the right person won, because the right person, that was who was supposed to win. That was who was in front. But yeah, I didn't necessarily agree with that stoppage itself. Big ups to October Red. Thank you very much for tuning in. Much appreciated as always. Always good to see you in the building. And Jam Downs, he says, you mentioned you don't change your mind about how a fight went when rewatching, rescoring, if you've watched and scored it live. Right, no. So what I've said was, if I see a fight, for instance, if I believe that someone has won a fight, for instance, I've watched it one way, I've watched it on TV, I might see slight nuances in terms of here or there, but you're always naturally gonna still think that whoever you thought won the first time wins again, because when you've rescored it, you've already got, when you're trying to rescore it, you've still already got into your head, well, this is who I thought won the first point, so you're still going to look for the same things you saw the last time to almost re-emphasize your point of view. So that's what I said there. But with regards to this, there was a couple of rounds that when I watched it live, I gave to Fondora, and then on rewatching, I can see how people gave those to Christina, and I chose to give them to Christina purely because, well, to be honest, purely because I could. And it didn't change the overall fact of what was happening in the fight, because I still believed that the same person won. But there are times where maybe, you know, one round you see a round a little bit this way and that way. But yeah, my point that I was making last week was that you're not going to watch a fight and then, like, with almost completely fresh eyes, and then totally see something different, because in your mind you're still going to be looking for who you believed won in the first instance. You're watching it again to reassert and reaffirm that to yourself. The only time to me that's different is if you're watching it live in the arena and then you're watching it on TV, because that's a totally different fight. You're not watching the same fight. When you're in the arena, you're seeing one angle, one set of circumstances. When you're on TV, you're seeing every angle plus replays and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I was referring to last week with regards to how you don't really change your opinion on who won a fight. But yeah, thank you for pulling me up, and obviously I'm always happy to explain my point. Oh, Mr. Johnny Come Lately is in the chat. What's he saying? Bless up all the dedicated defeaters. Hope to see you all on Saturday night at Wembley for Bawatsi versus Aziz. All right, cool. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, looks like Guy Fawkes is probably going to be there. And then yeah, so him and Tony are exchanging pleasantries in the chat. After that, there was I would say a pretty lackluster performance from Darius Fulgram against Atlantes Fox. Went the distance. His first fight where he doesn't get a stoppage. Atlantes has been knocked out a couple of times before, so the fact he couldn't break the guard and actually sort of, you know, get the stoppage there was a little disappointing. But it is what it is. It happens from time to time. Yeah, pretty much to say that. Also, Oscar Collazo defended his WBO. What title has he got? I think it's WBO minimum weight title, which I think is 105 pounds. And yeah, he got third round KO. Pretty devastating KO, to be totally honest. The sequence of punches that happened was, you know, basically it was good quality work, and I was impressed with it. It only lasted 3 rounds, which worked in my benefit, so I didn't have to, you know, stick around for it in that sense. But yeah, overall, I say it was a pretty decent event and affair to kick us off to the main event. So let's talk about that now. So for anyone just tuning in, well, we coming up to 40 minutes in, talk about Jaime Munguia versus John Ryder. So this fight, first things I want to say is Jaime Munguia boxed the best I've seen him box. Any fight I've watched, let's see, he's got 43 fights. I think I've seen about 25 of them as a whole. And yeah, this is the best performance I've seen from him. The jab, the way that he was using his jab to get into range, the way that he was actually using the jab to set up shots rather than just trying to use the jab to throw a big sort of looping right hand over the top, or sort of a big right hand behind it. He was placing that jab. I think even though he's had a lack of southpaw opponents, I actually think having the shorter southpaw really worked in his favor in this fight, because he was really able to snap that jab over the top of John Ryder's guard. And whereas Ryder was using, that sort of that low, the sort of like the low right hand, or sometimes he was alternate, but usually he had like his, actually no, a lot of the time he had the low left hand and he had the right hand up. But because Munguia was able to see over the top of that hand and over the top of the shoulder, he was able to catch him from angles that John Ryder usually should be comfortable with evading. But he looked a bit heavy-footed in this fight. He was he didn't seem as fleet-footed. He didn't get to the target as quickly as he usually does. He was getting picked off, especially in the first 4 rounds. It was competitive, except for obviously rounds 2 and 4, where he got dropped in both of those. But he was having some success, and he was trying to be that bigger guy, bullying Munguia to get on the inside, to work on the inside, to push him back, and to obviously impose his will and his dominance in that aspect. But Munguia showed that, no, I mean, I might be new to the weight, but I'm a big guy myself. Like, you're not just gonna push me around the ring like that. And ultimately, there was some complaining here or there from clashes of heads, or maybe gripping the arm a bit too tight. But ultimately, yeah, he was just controlling everything behind that jab. And then it got to, I think, rounds sort of 5, 6, and 7 was where John Ryder started. Round 5 was still a clear Jaime Munguia round, but you could see almost like the gears started to turn in John. He started to move. He started to actually get closer. He started to try and trade a bit more on the inside. And then around 6 and 7, it definitely felt like Jaime Munguia was tiring. And because he was tiring at this point in time, it was like, okay, I need to take a break. I can't keep up this work rate throughout the entire process of the fight. And I think the issue with John Ryder at that point is, normally he's very good at making someone work during their breaks. He'll take their shots, and then as soon as they're trying to get off and sort of have a walk around to get a breather, that's when he jumps in. That's when he the gorilla goes for the kill. And that's when he starts to bang to the body. That's when he starts to grip you. But he was just staying on the outside. So clearly there was a bunch of shots he must have felt that he didn't like, and wasn't just banking on sort of trying to jump through the front door, as they say. But round 6 and 7, he was really sort of getting to Munguia. I felt like Munguia was starting to feel the pace a bit, and Ryder was starting to warm into it. In the 8th round, Munguia had a very good start at the start of the round, but then I think got tired after a little bit of a salvo, and then John Ryder basically took over the rest of the round and was just sort of pushing Munguia back, pushing him back, and was landing some pretty decent shots. He got caught with a couple again, but he was landing shots, and you said to yourself, okay, maybe Munguia's kind of blown himself up a bit, and it could be interesting, if he can get his second wind, or if this is going to get a bit tasty for him down the final stretch. Well, lo and behold, the final stretch wasn't needed, because when it got to the 9th round, Jaime Munguia came back on the front foot. Both him and John obviously there exchanging in the pocket, and then he whips in that beautiful, I can't even call it overhand right. It wasn't overhand. It was just a sweeping right hook straight on the temple, and it froze John Ryder in his tracks, and you can kind of see it in his eyes. He literally went from this to, before obviously Jaime Munguia stepped back, seen that he's frozen, and has gone to throw the other shot, and at that point, like, John's legs have just betrayed him, and he's gone down. And at that point, it's like, okay, he gets up, but you just could tell that the writing was on the wall. While he seemed sturdy, he still seemed a bit discombobulated. Like, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm a warrior. That's the mindset. And all credit to him, because he got back up. He went swinging. He said, okay, we're going to swing it out. He got caught again from his southpaw stance being he was a bit too bladed. So every time he was throwing, he was basically putting himself officially side on, with no no protection for his head, his shoulders down, no hand. He gets caught again, goes down again, gets back up for the third time, but now all of a sudden he's trying to do the reverse Philly shell on the ropes, obviously the southpaw, but bearing in mind the shots are coming from the opposite angles to where his hands are being held, so he's got no idea where the shots are coming from. And then even when he's bringing his arm to protect himself, he's at one point I saw he had his arm here and then he moved it forward as the punch was coming in, and it's like you can tell that he must have been discombobulated, because at that point, no, where you had it initially was the right place to block that punch. And then he just moved it forward, took the punch, then got caught with another couple of flurries. Then obviously you see the commotion outside the ring. They're all saying, ref, wave it off. You've got the corner, like, waving the towel. You've got the doctor right beside the referee. It's almost like the referee said, until he goes down, until he takes more of this beating, until he drops again, like, this fight's continuing, all the way to the point where the timekeeper's got to ring the bell. Now, that's, to me, is weird, because I've never seen that because as far as I'm aware, the only person that can stop the fight is the referee. Even if you throw the towel in, if the ref decides that he doesn't want to obey that, he could still just disregard the towel. We've seen it happen. I think the only way you can get the fight stopped is if you enter the ring illegally and then get your guy disqualified. So the fact that the timekeeper even ding the bell, I don't know if that's even legal. I'd have to check. But to me, that seemed a bit, that's the length they had to go to get the ref's attention. He either was not cognizant of what his surroundings, or he had what is definitely known as cognitive dissonance. He was not interested in anything other than seeing John Ryder take more punches. He was compartmentalizing his duties at that point in time. So it was a very weird ending to the fight. But again, whereas I rate Jaime Munguia's performance brilliantly, I felt, like I said, this is the best he's looked. Him and Freddie Roach, that link up has definitely seemed to work, and this is their first fight together, and you can see the massive improvements. So I want to see what he looks like. Now, if he has a big fight next, it may be inconsequential, but I'm definitely more interested now to see his next fight and his next fight, to see if there is still progression. Even if he was to lose like one of the next ones, like, you can see that there's clear progression there. His defense still isn't great, but again, he's Freddie Roach, Eric Morales, his dad, they're not defensive teachers. They believe offense is the best defense. So, he's never going to be, defensively astute and missing every punch, but he was a lot more composed than he has been. So, yeah, overall, I was really impressed with his performance. And while I didn't necessarily like the way that John Ryder looked in there, I have to give him credit again for just being a warrior. Like, he could have decided to sit it out on the floor. He could have feigned like he couldn't get up. He got up every single time. He wanted to carry on fighting. He made his corner have to pull him out of the fight, because he was up and he was prepared to carry on. He was prepared to go out on his shield. He was prepared to respect the Warriors code to its fullest extent. Whether that is a smart thing or not, I'm gonna leave that to others, but I just respect the fact that he didn't decide to take the easy way out. Like, he fully was committed to either seeing that final bell or going out on his shields, which I respected. And I respect his corner for taking that decision away from him as well, because it was only going one way. After 5 knockdowns, you weren't anywhere close on the scorecards. It was only gonna carry on and maybe potentially get worse. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the fight. Good fight for Jaime. Be interesting to see what he's got, what will happen for him moving forward. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about the action over the weekend. As I said, I didn't watch any of it with any real vigor, except for obviously Chef Clark, McCarthy, obviously Crocker and Felix, and then Gabriela Fondora, Christina Cruz, and Munguia and Ryder. But again, if you haven't seen the Alan Picasso, Romero, and Eric Ruiz fight, that's definitely one to watch if you get a moment. I'm gonna go through the last couple messages. and then I'm going to sign off and let everyone have the rest of their evening. So, what have we got here? Fight Fan says, I agree. Best stuff seen in box, 100%. Jam Down, also best you've seen him. Tony, I agree. Best Mongear performance. Philip Ansar says that Freddie Roach link up seems to be doing well for him, definitely. And it's only the first one. So I'm excited to see how much more they can improve. Jam Down. Ryder's legs seemed a mess throughout the fight. He just seemed a bit clumsy with the footwork. He seemed very heavy footed. And I gave the basis picks predictions before the weigh-in that they had, because obviously they're on the West Coast. I think they was on the West Coast, and obviously their weigh-in came to us closer to like 9 p.m. I didn't have the time to wait for it. But then Danny basically told me that, yeah, he was looking a bit fleshy on the scales. And then when I saw the pictures, I said, oh, if I had seen that before, maybe I would have changed my prediction to stoppage as opposed to points. Because, yeah, he didn't look in his best condition. Maybe that's because it's just after Christmas and maybe he decided he wanted to crash weight rather than be disciplined. I'm not sure. But, yeah, Fight Fan. Yeah, he was loving it more than Steve Willis. He definitely seemed, he was enthralled in the action, 100%. Philip, what do you make of David Benavidez saying Munguia is an easy KO? I don't actually think he was saying that Munguia was an easy KO. I think he was saying that Ryder was an easy KO. So I think basically what he meant by the post was that Ryder's an easy KO for him. So it shouldn't have been 9 rounds for Jaime. But you know, now I know why Jaime ducked the fight with me. I think that's basically what he was trying to say. I don't think he believes that he KOs Jaime Munguia easily. I mean, he might do, because remember, Jaime Munguia is a former 154-pounder. Benavidez is a former light heavyweight that moved down to super middle. So he's definitely going to have the size advantage. But I don't know if, whereas Jaime is going to be able to, because he's not having to drain down so much weight, he should have more natural energy. And whereas, you know, David cuts a lot of weight, it's only going to be a matter of time before that starts to show effects in the ring until he finally goes back up to light heavyweight where he should be. And yeah, Hot Pies, big up to you, big up, salute. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for rocking with me. It's a shorter episode, shorter show, but I hope it has been informative. I hope you have enjoyed. I haven't bored anyone for the 53 minutes I've been on. For all of you in the chat, as you can see there, BaseDaKID, the Hardcore Casual, is the YouTube channel. I'm going to see if I can do some footage and some episode tonight to put up tomorrow morning. I'm going to be at the house from extra early tomorrow, so if I don't get it done then, I probably won't get one done. I will be at the live gloves are off on Thursday for Bawatsi versus Aziz. Whether or not I actually go to the fight, I'm not sure yet. Haven't decided, although you know, shock horror, I've actually been accredited by Boxer to go, the first time in history. So I mean, that means either one of two things, but I'm not going to say what they are on here just in case I incriminate myself. That being said, yes, I haven't decided if I'm going to make the actual the fight card yet, but we'll see. We'll see how things pan out Thursday onwards. So yeah, so BaseDaKID Hardcore Casual is the YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at BaseDaKID. Threads, I've only put up one thing thus far. None of it's really boxing content related unless it's in the stories. So yeah, don't go there for any boxing takes or hot takes. Definitely tune into Fight Fan TV live on Instagram and October Reds Media on Instagram for all of the juicy fight news and you know, the stories and the mix up, because that's their bag and they are very, very good at what they do. And also on Twitter, B_A_S_E, or you could just start to type in BaseDaKID and I am the first one that shows up. So definitely you can check me out on there. I'm always fairly active on there. You know, it's causing a ruckus at times, but always trying to drop knowledge where I can. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. Big ups to everyone who has tuned in. Look forward to seeing you all again next week. And for right now, the Hardcore Casual out. Peace.